This is what they're not telling you. They see where you're going, but they don't know if they're going to be able to get there with you. They don't know if they can figure it out the way that you have figured it out. And that is going to cause a lot of clashing, okay? If you are able to navigate difficult situations or however you do the best, and they get overwhelmed, it's going to be feeling like somebody is carrying most of the baggage. Now, sometimes people will front. They will say and tell you and pretend to be a person that they're not. And so that's what it kind of feels like. It feels like wanting to not be left behind, but also being afraid to say, hey, like, I don't know what I'm doing, because they don't want you to look at them as anything less. I don't know, something about you has got them feeling like they can do anything, but they really don't feel like, oh, okay, I actually can do anything. And they're afraid that you will figure that out about them. They're afraid that, they're afraid that they'll be an imposter, because it just appears like you know what you're doing at all times. Like you are very aware of how to approach things or how to go after things. And they just don't know what to do. Now, in the beginning of these dynamics, it's going to be very subtle, but as time progresses, it is only going to get more intense. What I think you should do is just be honest. If you have this intuition inside of you, and you know exactly who I'm talking about, if you have that intuition inside of you, just go have an open conversation. You don't want to lose important people in your life because you're afraid to have a conversation with them. And so just do that. Now, if they are honest, how are you going to do, like, what are you going to do next, because the question is, like, sometimes people put on a mask and then they take the mask off, but they also have no intention of coming up with a follow through or a secondary answer. So you have to ask yourself, okay, do you want to help them figure it out? It is not necessarily your responsibility to do so, but they're feeling, left out, but at the same time, they may not be ready to move forward. So what are you going to do? Sometimes you kind of just have to let people, especially adults, come to a realization on their own instead of you being responsible for it. But, I think the sharing of wisdom and access and stuff is important. So if you want to help, like, just think about it, like, think about, okay, like, will I look at this person differently if, they aren't as great as I've built them up to be? Because that's what happens in a lot of relationships. Sometimes people can despise people that they used to date or they used to be friends with because they built them up so high in their mind when they weren't doing any of those things. They weren't really showing up in any of those kinds of ways. And so a lot of times your energy is seeping or leaking out onto them. They're collecting the excess. They probably like that excess energy, but they don't really know what they're doing. So, you know, pay attention, because they're not going to say it. They may not even know how to verbalize saying this stuff. And if you know exactly who you are and what you need to do and what your next path is, it's going to be difficult if you connect with people who don't know. Also, if you have that spirit in you, but you might be going through a difficult time, or you never know, life happens, sometimes times can suck. You're not going to have that energy to figure out your situation and their situation too. So let them figure it out on their own. You don't have to be responsible. You could be understanding, but they're afraid to tell you that. They don't know how to tell you that. without it changing how you look at them and how you feel about them and the love that you have for them. And that's what it means to be an adult. It looks like those kinds of things. It doesn't just look like, oh, okay, this is perfect, and then you walk off into the sunset. No, there's a whole lot of life to live, and being able to communicate with each other in an efficient way. So if you can do that, you have a calm nervous system, you know, you have to make a decision of if it's worth it to carry the load for both. And that decision is up to you. Now, if you need some healing, you can also get some healing from me at Reiki Healing Hope and at Jet Lachey 9. I don't have any worries that you can't figure this out. It's going to be fine, you know. Trust yourself, but know